The moment Elena stepped up to the microphone at the Riverside Community Center, I knew something was terribly wrong. She was glowing in that white sundress I'd bought her for our anniversary, her hand resting protectively over her belly as she smiled at the crowd of family, friends, and coworkers who'd gathered for what I thought was our pregnancy announcement. But her eyes weren't looking at me. They were locked on Dylan, who stood in the front row with that confident smirk I'd grown to hate over the past 8 months. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Thank you all for being here today. Elena's voice carried across the room with practiced ease. Marcus has been such an incredible help putting this whole event together. She gestured toward me and I felt a chill run down my spine. Help. I wasn't help. I was supposed to be the father. I was supposed to be standing beside her, not arranging chairs and coordinating with caterers like some hired assistant. The applause that followed felt hollow, echoing off the community center walls as I watched Elena's hand intertwine with Dylan's when he stepped up beside her. That's when I knew. That's when 6 years of my life, 6 years of believing I was building something real with the woman I loved, came crashing down in the span of a heartbeat. My relationship with Elena started during our junior year at UT Austin. I was working 3 jobs just to stay afloat, barely scraping together enough for textbooks and ramen noodles. When she walked into my life like something out of a dream, Elena Rodriguez was everything I wasn't. Confident, well-connected, from a family that owned half the real estate developments around Cedar Park. When she chose me over the fraternity guys and pre-med students her parents had lined up, I'd won the lottery. For 6 years, I poured everything I had into that relationship. Every promotion at TechFlow Solutions meant a nicer gift for Elena. Every bonus went toward the engagement ring I'd been slowly paying off. Month by month, when she mentioned wanting to travel, I worked overtime for 3 months straight to surprise her with a trip to Cabo. When her car broke down, I sold my motorcycle to help her get a newer one. When she talked about wanting to start a charity foundation, I spent weekends helping her file paperwork and set up fundraising events. Elena had this way of making me feel like I was the most important person in her world, right up until the moment someone more interesting walked into the room. During college, it was professors who might give her better grades, or upperclassmen who could get her into exclusive parties. After graduation, it was clients who might advance her marketing career, or wealthy donors who could fund her charity work. I told myself it was just networking, just Elena being smart about her future. Our future. The first time I heard Dylan's name was 8 months ago when Elena came home from a charity board meeting with stars in her eyes. You remember Dylan Martinez, right? From college? He's moving back to Austin. His tech startup just got acquired by some massive company in Seattle and he's looking to invest in local nonprofits. She said it casually, like mentioning what she'd had for lunch, but I saw the way her cheeks flushed when she talked about him. Dylan had been Elena's boyfriend their sophomore year, before I came into the picture. According to Elena, they'd broken up when he decided to transfer to University of Washington to pursue some big tech opportunity. Ancient history, she'd always said when his name came up in old college stories. We wanted different things. Apparently, those different things had aligned perfectly by the time Dylan returned to Austin with his Tesla Model S, his downtown loft, and his casual mentions of angel investing. Within a week of his return, Elena was having coffee meetings with him to discuss her charity's expansion plans. Within a month, Dylan had not only donated $50,000 to her foundation, but had somehow talked his way into a consulting position at TechFlow Solutions, where I'd been working my way up for 4 years. I should have seen the signs then. Elena started working late more often, always on charity events that somehow required Dylan's input. Her phone was constantly buzzing with messages she'd glance at and smile before turning the screen away from me. She began suggesting I dress differently, act more professionally, network more effectively. Dylan was telling me about this conference in Denver, she'd say. Or Dylan thinks you should consider learning Python instead of focusing so much on Java. The worst part was how reasonable it all seemed. Dylan was successful, connected, and genuinely seemed to want to help both Elena's charity work and my career development. When he arranged for me to interview for a senior developer position on his team, I felt grateful. When he invited both of us to dinner at expensive restaurants around Austin, picking up the check with a casual wave, I told myself he was just being generous. When Elena started mentioning how mature Dylan had become, how much he'd grown since college, how different he was from the boy she'd known, I convinced myself she was just happy to have reconnected with an old friend. The pregnancy test changed everything, or so I thought. Elena had been feeling sick for weeks, tired and emotional in ways that seemed unlike her usual stress responses to work and charity obligations. When she showed me the positive test 3 months ago, tears streaming down her face, I felt like my entire world had suddenly clicked into perfect focus. This was it. This was the moment that would cement our relationship, make us a real family, prove that all my years of devotion and sacrifice had been worth it. "I can't believe it," she'd whispered, letting me hold her as she cried what I assumed were tears of joy. "This changes everything, Marcus. Everything." I spent that night lying awake, planning our future. We need a bigger place, somewhere with good schools, in a safe neighborhood. I'd have to work even harder, maybe ask for more responsibility at TechFlow to position myself for another promotion. Elena would need to scale back her charity work during the pregnancy, which meant I'd need to support her emotionally and financially. Through the transition, I'd never been happier to face such enormous responsibility. The next morning, Elena was already making lists. Doctors to call, appointments to schedule, people to tell. But she wanted to wait until the second trimester to make any announcements, she said. Just to be safe, I understood. I respected her caution. I spent those months reading pregnancy books, researching pediatricians, secretly shopping for cribs online during my lunch breaks at work. Dylan's involvement in the announcement planning started small. Elena mentioned that her charity's annual fundraiser was coming up. And wouldn't it be perfect timing to announce the pregnancy there? All our friends and family would already be gathered. It would give the charity some positive press. And Dylan had offered to help coordinate with his media contacts to make sure the announcement got picked up by local news outlets. "It'll be great exposure for the foundation," Elena explained, scrolling through Pinterest boards of pregnancy announcement ideas on her laptop. "And Dylan has such great ideas about how to make it really special and memorable." I found myself relegated to logistics coordinator. Elena and Dylan would spend hours on FaceTime, calls planning the perfect announcement while I was tasked with booking the venue, arranging, catering, sending invitations, and coordinating with vendors when I suggested I should be more involved. In the creative planning, Elena would pat my arm and remind me that event planning wasn't really my strength. "You're so good at the practical stuff, babe. Let us handle the creative vision." The community center was packed that Saturday afternoon. Elena had invited everyone. My parents, Robert and Linda, who'd driven down from Round Rock, her parents, Victor and Patricia, who'd arrived early to ensure everything met their exacting standards, coworkers from both TechFlow and Elena's marketing firm, friends from college, neighbors from our apartment complex, what seemed like half the Austin charity circuit. I'd spent the morning setting up chairs, testing the sound system, arranging the refreshment tables, and making sure Elena's presentation slides were loaded correctly on the projector. Dylan had shown up fashionably late, dressed in a navy blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Carrying a bouquet of white roses for Elena and a bottle of champagne that he placed conspicuously on the gift table. "Great work, Marcus," he'd said, surveying the setup with the air of someone inspecting work performed by hired help. "Elena's going to love this." As guests arrived and mingled, I noticed things that should have alarmed me. The way Elena kept checking her phone and glancing toward the entrance until Dylan arrived, how she immediately gravitated toward him when he walked in, accepting his flowers with a smile I hadn't seen her give me in months. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The way people seemed to naturally assume Dylan was involved in organizing the event, thanking him for hosting such a lovely gathering. When Elena finally stepped up to the microphone, I positioned myself near the back of the room, wanting to capture her announcement on video to send to relatives who couldn't make it. I expected her to call me up beside her, to share the moment that would mark the beginning of our family. Instead, she thanked me for my help like I was a wedding planner who'd done a competent job executing someone else's vision. This announcement is especially meaningful to me, Elena continued, her voice steady and warm, because it represents not just new life but new beginnings and the power of true love to overcome any obstacle. The crowd murmured appreciatively, and I felt my chest swell with pride despite the strange phrasing. This was my moment too. Our moment. Dylan and I are thrilled to share that we're expecting our first child this fall. The words hit me like a physical blow. Dylan and I, our first child. I felt the blood drain from my face as applause erupted around me as people turned to congratulate the happy couple. As Dylan wrapped his arms around Elena and kissed her with the passion of a man who just announced the best news of his life, I stood frozen in the back of the room, camera still recording, watching the woman I'd loved for 6 years, the woman who'd been living in my apartment and sleeping in my bed, and planning our future together, celebrate her pregnancy with another man. The pregnancy I'd assumed was mine. The child I'd been dreaming about and planning for and already loving with every fiber of my being. Elena's eyes found mine across the crowded room, and for just a moment, her radiant smile faltered. She knew I was there. She knew what this moment meant to me. She knew exactly what she was taking away from me, and she'd done it anyway, in front of everyone who mattered to both of us. The applause seemed to go on forever, but all I could hear was the sound of my own heart breaking, loud, and sharp and final. The silence that followed Elena's announcement felt like it stretched for hours, though it couldn't have been more than a few seconds. Then the chaos began. People rushed forward to congratulate the happy couple, cameras flashed, and someone popped the champagne Dylan had brought. The sound of the cork echoing through the community center might as well have been a gunshot for how it made me flinch. I stood there like a statue, still holding my phone, the video still recording as my world collapsed around me.
Through the
screen, I watched Elena accept hugs and congratulations, her hand protectively cradling her belly while Dylan's arm remained firmly around her waist. They looked perfect together, like something out of a magazine spread about successful young couples. My mother Linda was the first to reach me, confusion written across her face. "Marcus, honey, what's going on? I thought you said this was your announcement?" Her voice carried just loud enough that several nearby guests turned to look at us. The whispers started immediately. "I thought it was too," I managed to say, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. My father Robert appeared. Beside her, his jaw set in that way it got when he was trying to control his temper in public. "Son, you need to explain what's happening here," he said quietly, his eyes darting between me and the celebration happening 20 feet away. "Because right now it looks like we've been made fools of." Before I could respond, Elena's mother, Patricia, materialized beside us with the predatory grace of a woman who'd spent decades navigating social disasters. "Robert, Linda, how wonderful to see you both," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hope you're not too disappointed." About the mix-up, Elena mentioned that Marcus had gotten a bit confused about the nature of today's announcement. Confused. Like I was some child who'd misunderstood the rules of a game. My mother's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Confused about what exactly? Patricia's smile grew sharper. "Marcus has been such a dear friend to Elena, and he's been so helpful with her charity work. I think he might have misinterpreted some of her gratitude. You know how these things can happen when someone gets a bit too attached?" The words hit like slaps. Dear friend, helpful, too attached. I felt my parents stiffen beside me as the full scope of my humiliation became clear. Not only had Elena publicly announced her pregnancy with another man, but her family was actively rewriting our 6th-year relationship as some kind of one-sided obsession. "That's not what happened," I said, finding my voice. "Elena and I have been together for 6 years. We live together. I've been supporting her charity, her career, everything. She told me the baby was mine." Patricia's eyebrows rose in an expression of perfectly practiced surprise. "Oh, Marcus, surely you didn't think. Elena and Dylan have been planning this for months. Ever since he returned to Austin, they've been working on rebuilding their relationship. Elena mentioned that you'd been very sweet about helping her transition out of your friendship, but I had no idea you'd misunderstood so completely. The gaslighting was so smooth, so confident, that for a moment I questioned my own memory. Had I imagined the past 6 years? The nights Elena spent in my bed, the conversations about our future, the way she'd cried when she showed me the pregnancy test. But then I remembered the spare key to my apartment in her purse, the bills that came to our shared address, the lease we'd signed together just 8 months ago. My father's voice cut through my confusion like a blade. Patricia, with all due respect, that's complete nonsense and you know it. Marcus doesn't lie, and he sure as hell doesn't invent 6-year relationships. Patricia's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. Robert, I understand you want to support your son, but Marcus has always had a tendency to become overly invested in Elena's life. We've been concerned about it for some time. Overly invested? My mother repeated, her voice rising. In his girlfriend of 6 years? In the woman he's been planning to marry? Mother, please keep your voice down, came Elena's voice from behind us. I turned to see her approaching, Dylan's hand still firmly attached to her lower back, like he was afraid she might float away. Marcus, can we talk privately for a moment? The crowd around us had grown noticeably quieter, conversations trailing off as people strained to hear what was happening. I could see phones being discreetly pointed in our direction, undoubtedly, capturing every moment of my public humiliation for social media posterity. I think we've talked enough, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. You've made your position pretty clear. Elena's face crumpled into an expression of wounded innocence that I'd seen her practice in mirrors. Marcus, please don't make this harder than it has to be. I never meant for you to get hurt. I thought you understood that what we had was just temporary. Temporary. 6 years of my life dismissed as temporary. The engagement ring I'd been paying off monthly, hidden in my sock drawer, suddenly felt like evidence of my own stupidity. The apartment lease we signed 8 months ago says otherwise, I said. The joint bank account says otherwise. The way you cried in my arms when you showed me the pregnancy test says otherwise. Dylan stepped forward then, his voice smooth and reasonable. Marcus, I think there's been a genuine misunderstanding here. Elena told me you'd been having some financial difficulties and she was trying to help you out by splitting expenses. As for the pregnancy test, she was just excited to share the news with a close friend. Close friend. The same dismissive language Patricia had used, clearly coordinated between them. I felt something snap inside me, a cord of patience and goodwill that had been stretched to its breaking point. Financial difficulties, I repeated slowly. Is that what we're calling it when I work 60-hour weeks to support your lifestyle? When I pay for your charity events, your car repairs, your families, birthday gifts? Marcus, that's enough, Elena said sharply, glancing nervously at the crowd that had definitely stopped pretending not to listen. You're embarrassing yourself? I'm embarrassing myself? The laugh that escaped me sounded foreign and bitter. Elena, I've been living with you for 2 years. I've met your doctors, your accountant, your therapist. I've been to your family Christmas dinners. I helped you through your father's heart attack last spring. But sure, let's pretend I'm just some confused friend who misread the situation. Victor Rodriguez chose that moment to insert himself into the conversation, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to controlling narratives. Marcus, I think it's best if you leave now. You're clearly upset, and this isn't the time or place for whatever personal issues you're dealing with. Personal issues? My voice was getting louder now, and I didn't care. Victor, your daughter, has been living in my apartment, sleeping in my bed, and spending my money for the past 2 years. 3 months ago, she told me she was pregnant with my child. Today, I find out she's been cheating on me with her ex-boyfriend, and apparently rewriting our entire relationship as some kind of charity case. So yes, I'm having personal issues. The crowd around us had grown completely silent now, the earlier celebration atmosphere replaced by the tense energy of people witnessing a very public breakdown. Elena's face had gone white, her carefully orchestrated announcement dissolving into exactly the kind of scene she'd spent years avoiding. That's not what happened, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Marcus, you're confused. The pregnancy. Dylan and I have been trying for months. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the text messages I'd screenshot, Weeks ago, when Elena's behavior had started seeming strange. Is that why you texted me 2 weeks ago, asking if I'd noticed any changes in your body? Is that why you made me come with you to buy prenatal vitamins? Is that why you cried when you thought you might be miscarrying and made me drive you to the emergency room at 2 in the morning? Dylan's confident expression faltered for the first time. Elena, what is he talking about? It's not what? It sounds like Elena said quickly, but I could see panic creeping into her eyes. Marcus has been very supportive during a difficult time, but nothing. I turned to address the crowd directly, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent community center. Everyone here knows Elena and I have been together for 6 years. You've seen us at parties, at charity events, at family gatherings. You've eaten dinner at our apartment, met our neighbors, seen our Christmas cards. So when her family tries to convince you that I'm some delusional friend who invented our entire relationship, ask yourselves what's more likely, that I'm having an elaborate, a psychotic break, or that Elena got caught cheating and is trying to rewrite history. The murmur that rippled through the crowd was not sympathetic to Elena. These were people who knew us, who'd watched our relationship develop over the years. Patricia's attempts to gaslight me might work on strangers, but they fell flat with people who'd seen Elena use my credit card to pay for drinks and introduce me as her boyfriend at countless social events. Marcus, please, Elena said, reaching for my arm. Can we just talk about this privately? You're making a scene. I looked down at her hand on my arm, at the engagement ring Dylan had clearly bought her gleaming on her finger, and felt the last of my illusions crumble. No, Elena, you made the scene when you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone. Care about. You made the scene when you chose to announce your pregnancy with another man at an event I organized and paid for. You made the scene when you decided to rewrite 6 years of my life as a charity case. I gently removed her hand from my arm and stepped back. I hope you and Dylan are very happy together. I hope your child grows up to be everything you dream of. But I'm done being your backup plan, your financial support system, and your emotional security blanket while you live your real life with someone else. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena's carefully constructed narrative had crumbled in front of 50 witnesses, and there was no putting it back together. Dylan looked like he was reconsidering several major life decisions, and both sets of parents were staring at their children with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disgust. I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving behind the community center, the celebration, and 6 years of my life. Behind me I could hear Elena calling my name, but I didn't turn around. The automatic doors slid open and I stepped out in two. The Austin heat finally free, but utterly destroyed. My phone started buzzing immediately. Text messages, missed calls, notifications from social media as people who'd been at the announcement started sharing their own versions of what had happened. I turned it off and kept walking, not sure where I was going, but certain I couldn't stay where I'd been. The walk back to my apartment complex took 45 minutes in the sweltering Texas heat. But I needed the time to process what had just happened. By the time I reached Sunset Ridge Apartments, my shirt was soaked through with sweat, and my mind was spinning with questions I didn't want to answer. How long had Elena been planning this? How many people knew the truth about Dylan and chose to say nothing? How could I have been so completely blind to what was happening in my own life? The sight of Elena's car already parked in my assigned spot answered at least one question. She'd beaten me home, probably breaking several speed limits in the process. I could see her silhouette through the living room window, pacing back and forth while gesturing animatedly into her phone. Damage control mode had officially begun. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, air conditioning blasting, trying to gather the courage to walk into my own home. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, my closest friend from work. Dude, what the hell happened at Elena's thing? Twitter's going crazy. Attached was a screenshot of a tweet from someone who'd been at the announcement. Just witnessed the most awkward pregnancy reveal in history. Girl announces baby with her ex, while her current boyfriend finds out he's been played for 6 years. Austin's charity scene is messy. Great, my humiliation was already going viral. Elena must have heard my car door slam because she was standing in the doorway before I made it halfway across the parking lot. Her earlier radiant glow had been replaced by red-rimmed eyes and mascara streaks, and she'd changed out of the white. Sundress into jeans and a TechFlow Solutions t-shirt. My t-shirt, I realized with a bitter laugh. Even in crisis mode, she was still claiming pieces of my life. "Marcus, thank God you're home," she said, rushing toward me. "We need to talk about what happened. There's been a huge misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I said, brushing past her toward the apartment, "was me thinking you were a decent human being." She followed me inside, immediately launching into what sounded like a rehearsed speech. "I know how this looked, but you have to understand that Dylan and I never planned for things to happen this way. When he came back to Austin, we were just friends." Feelings developed slowly, and by the time we realized what was happening, I was already pregnant. I dropped my keys on the kitchen counter and turned to face her. "Elena, stop. Just stop." "Lying, you told me 3 months ago that you were pregnant with my child." "You cried in my arms. You let me start planning our future. You let me fall in love with a baby that was never mine." "I wasn't lying," she said, tears starting fresh. "I honestly thought it might be yours." The timing was confusing, and Dylan and I had only been together a few times. The casual way she said it, like betraying 6 years of my life was just a minor scheduling conflict, made my vision go red around the edges. A few times I repeated, slowly, "How many times, Elena, and over how long?" She looked away, fidgeting with the engagement ring Dylan had given her. "It doesn't matter now. What matters is figuring out how to move forward. I know you're hurt, but we can work through this." "Work through this?" I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. "Elena, you just announced your pregnancy with another man at an event I organized. Your mother tried to convince my parents that our 6-year relationship was a delusion." Dylan stood there and let them paint me as some stalker who'd imagined the whole thing. "What exactly are we working through?" Before she could answer, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and immediately brightened. "It's Dylan. I should take this." The fact that she would answer her boyfriend's call in the middle of our conversation, in my apartment, while wearing my shirt, crystallized something cold and final in my chest. I watched her walk into the bedroom for privacy, heard her voice drop to the intimate whisper she used to use with me, and started planning my exit strategy. I was pulling clothes from our shared dresser when she returned, her expression shifting to panic. "What are you doing?" "Packing," I said simply, folding t-shirts with mechanical precision. "I'm going to stay at a hotel for a few days while I figure out my next move." "Marcus, no." She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "You can't just leave. We need to figure this out together. Dylan is upset about how things went today. He thinks there might be a way to fix this if we all sit down and talk." The sheer audacity of it stopped me cold. "Dylan is upset? Dylan thinks we should all sit down and talk? Elena, do you hear yourself right now? You're asking me to have a conversation with the man who got you pregnant while you were living with me about how to fix the situation?" "It's not that simple," she said, but I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes. "We're all adults here. Surely we can find a mature way to handle this." My phone rang before I could respond. My mother's contact photo filled the screen, and I knew this conversation was going to be even worse than the one I was already having. "Marcus, what in the world is going on?" Linda's voice was strained, exhausted. "I just got off the phone with Patricia Rodriguez, and she's saying the most terrible things about you. She's claiming you've been stalking Elena, making up stories about being together. Your father is furious, and honestly, I don't know what to believe anymore." I felt Elena watching me as I tried to navigate the conversation. "Mom, everything I told you about Elena and me was true. We've been living together for 2 years. She's been cheating on me with Dylan for months. And today she decided to publicly humiliate me rather than break up with me like a normal person. But Patricia says Elena has been trying to help you out financially because you've been struggling, and that you misinterpreted her kindness as something romantic. She says Dylan has been trying to help you get a better position at work, and that you've been resentful about accepting charity from them." The rewriting of history was so complete, so coordinated, that I almost admired its thoroughness. Almost, "Mom, Elena and I signed a lease together. We have a joint bank account. She has a key to my apartment. These aren't the actions of someone giving charity to a delusional stalker. Well, Patricia says Elena was just trying to help you maintain your dignity while transitioning out of whatever relationship you thought you had." I looked at Elena, who was standing close enough to hear every word of my mother's doubt, and saw something like satisfaction flicker across her face. She'd gotten to my parents. She'd planted enough uncertainty that even my own mother was questioning my version of events. "I'll call you back later, Mom," I said and hung up. Elena immediately moved closer, her voice gentle and manipulative in the way I'd learned to recognize over the years. "Marcus, I know my mother can be overwhelming, but she's just trying to protect everyone involved. Maybe it would be easier if we told people that we decided to end things amicably after Dylan came back. That way nobody has to be the bad guy." "Nobody has to be the bad guy," I repeated. "Elena, you cheated on me, lied to me about being pregnant with my child, and publicly humiliated me in front of everyone we know. You are the bad guy." Her face hardened. I never lied about the baby. I told you I thought it might be yours. And that was true at the time. When did you know for sure it was Dylan's?" The pause was long enough to answer my question before she did. "The paternity test results came back 2 weeks ago." 2 weeks. She'd known for 2 weeks that the child wasn't mine. And she'd let me continue planning our future, researching pediatricians, shopping for baby furniture online during my lunch breaks. She'd watched me read pregnancy books and download parenting apps and talk about converting our spare room into a nursery, all while knowing I was living in a fantasy. 2 weeks, I said. And you said nothing. I was trying to find the right way to tell you. I knew you'd be upset, and I wanted to make sure Dylan and I had a plan for moving forward before I broke your heart." "Before you broke my heart." I laughed, and it came out broken. "Elena, you didn't break my heart. You destroyed it. You took 6 years of my life and turned them into a lie. You made me question my own memory, my own sanity, my own worth. As a human being, that's not what I meant to do," she said, and for the first time, she sounded genuinely remorseful. "Marcus, I do care about you. I always have. You've been so good to me, so supportive and patient and kind. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did hurt me. You're still hurting me right now by asking me to pretend that this is somehow acceptable." My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Son, your mother is very upset. Patricia Rodriguez is a convincing woman, and she's got Linda second-guessing everything. You need to come home and explain this situation properly." Another text followed immediately. "Also, I got a call from someone at your work. There might be some complications with your position. You should call your boss first thing Monday morning." I showed Elena the text, and her face went pale. "I don't know anything about that," she said quickly. "Dylan wouldn't interfere with your job." But even as she said it, I could see the lie in her eyes. This wasn't just about personal relationships anymore. This was about systematically dismantling my life to make room for theirs. My phone rang again. Jake's name flashed on the screen, and I answered immediately. "Marcus, where are you?" His voice was urgent, worried. "I just got pulled into manager William's office. He wants to see you first thing Monday morning. He's asking questions about your relationship with Elena Rodriguez and Dylan Martinez. Someone's been feeding him information about your personal life, and it doesn't sound good." I felt the walls closing in. It wasn't enough for Elena to break my heart and humiliate me publicly. They were coming for my career, the one thing I'd built independently of her influence. "What kind of information?" I asked, though I was afraid I already knew. "Stuff about you being obsessed with Elena, making her uncomfortable at work events, using company resources for personal projects. Williams mentioned something about you organizing today's event on company time and using TechFlow's vendor contacts without authorization. None of it was true, but I could see how it could be made to look true. Elena's charity events, which I'd helped organize on weekends and during my lunch breaks, could be painted as misuse of company time. The vendor contacts I'd used, people I'd worked with on legitimate TechFlow projects who'd given me referrals as a favor, could be framed as abuse of professional relationships. Jake, you know that's not what happened." "I know, man, but Williams. Doesn't it? Dylan Martinez apparently has a lot of influence with the executives upstairs. Word is he's being considered for a permanent senior consultant position, and his recommendations carry weight." I hung up and looked at Elena, who was watching me with something that might have been guilt or might have been calculation. "Knew about this," I said. You knew Dylan was going after my job. It's not like that, she said, but her protest sounded weak. Dylan just thinks it might be easier for everyone if you had a fresh start somewhere else. There are lots of tech companies in Austin. You're talented. You'll find something. A fresh start. Like 6 years of relationship history and 4 years of career development were just obstacles to be cleared away for their convenience. Get out, I said quietly. Marcus, please get out of my apartment. Or take your things and go stay with Dylan. We're done. She started to cry then. Real tears that I might have believed a few hours earlier. I never wanted it to end like this. I do love you, Marcus, just not the way you needed me to. If you loved me, I said, you wouldn't have spent months lying to me about whose child you were carrying. If you loved me, you wouldn't have let your mother convince my parents that I was delusional. If you loved me, you wouldn't be destroying my career to make room for your real relationship. She gathered a few things from the bedroom, moving slowly like she was hoping I'd change my mind. At the door, she turned back one last time. This isn't over, Marcus. We still need to figure out the practical things. The lease, the bank account. All of it. The lease is in my name, I said. The bank account has my money in it. Consider those problems solved. After she left, I sat in the silence of my apartment and tried to inventory the damage. My relationship was over. My job was in jeopardy. My parents doubted my version of events. Elena and Dylan were systematically rewriting our shared history. To paint me as an unstable stalker rather than a betrayed partner. But for the first time in months, I was alone with my thoughts and my truth, and that felt like something I could build on. Monday morning arrived with the kind of artificial cheerfulness that only fluorescent office lighting can provide. I'd spent the weekend at the Grandview Hotel, using the time to compile evidence of what had really happened over the past 8 months. Bank statements showing my payments for Elena's charity events. Text message screenshots. Email chains about our shared apartment lease. Photos from social media that clearly showed Elena and me as a couple at various events over the years. Elena and Dylan wanted to rewrite history. I was going to make sure the truth had documentation. Manager Williams' office felt smaller than usual when I walked in at 8 sharp. He was a fair man, someone I'd always respected, but the expression on his face told me that Dylan's influence campaign had been thorough and convincing. Marcus, sit down, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I'll be direct with you. I've received some concerning information about your conduct, both professionally and personally, and I need to hear your side of the story. I appreciate the opportunity to explain, I said, pulling out the folder I'd prepared. But first, can you tell me specifically what allegations have been made? Williams opened a file on his desk, and I could see Dylan's name at the top of several printed emails. According to Dylan Martinez, you've been using company resources to stalk and harass Elena Rodriguez. He says you've been organizing events on company time, using our vendor relationships for personal projects, and creating an uncomfortable work environment by pursuing a romantic relationship with someone who's repeatedly asked you to stop. The lies were so detailed, so carefully constructed, that I almost admired their craftsmanship. Almost. Manager Williams, I've brought documentation that directly contradicts those allegations, I said, opening my folder. Elena Rodriguez and I have been in a committed relationship for 6 years. We've lived together for 2 years. The events I helped organize were legitimate charity fundraisers that Elena specifically asked me to help with, and I did that work entirely on my own time. I handed him printed bank statements showing payments to vendors, text messages from Elena asking for my help with various projects, and copies of our joint lease agreement. Williams studied the documents with the careful attention of someone trying to reconcile 2 completely different versions of reality. These are compelling, he admitted, but Dylan has provided what he says is Elena's account of your relationship. According to her, you've been misinterpreting a friendship as something romantic, and she's been trying to let you down gently while maintaining a professional working relationship. Did Dylan provide any documentation to support that version of events? Williams hesitated. Said Elena was too uncomfortable to provide written statements, given your alleged behavior. How convenient, I said dryly. Manager Williams, I'm going to ask you to call Elena right now and ask her directly. Whether we've been in a romantic relationship for the past 6 years, ask her if she's ever lived at my apartment, if we've shared financial responsibilities, if she introduced me to her family as her boyfriend. Marcus, I can't involve myself in your personal relationships to that degree. You already have, I pointed out. Dylan Martinez has made this a professional issue by making allegations about my conduct. If those allegations are false, then someone is lying to damage my career, and that's definitely a professional issue. Before Williams could respond, his assistant knocked and entered. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation developing in the main conference room. Elena Rodriguez is here with Dylan Martinez, and they're asking to speak with both of you immediately. Williams and I exchanged glances, and this was either going to resolve everything or make it infinitely worse. The conference room was buzzing with energy when we arrived. Elena sat at the head of the table, looking polished and professional in a navy blazer I'd bought her for her birthday last year. Dylan was beside her, laptop open, clearly in presentation mode. Several other executives I didn't recognize were also present, including someone from HR and what looked like a lawyer. Thank you for joining us, Dylan said, standing as we entered. Elena and I felt it was important to address the situation that's developed with Marcus directly and transparently. Elena smiled at me with the kind of pitying expression reserved for confused children. Marcus, I want you to know that despite everything that's happened, I don't hold any grudges. I understand that you may have misinterpreted our friendship, and I'm willing to work with the company to ensure this doesn't affect your career negatively. The magnanimous offer of forgiveness for crimes I hadn't committed was so perfectly calculated that I had to admire its audacity. She was positioning herself as the generous victim, willing to overlook my supposed stalking in the interest of professional harmony. It's very generous of you, Elena, I said, taking a seat across from them. Before we continue, though, I'd like to clarify something for everyone in the room. You and I have been in a romantic relationship for 6 years, living together for 2 years, and you told me 3 months ago that you were pregnant with my child. Are you claiming that none of that happened? Elena's practiced composure flickered. For just a moment, Marcus. We've discussed this. Ow. Our friendship was important to me, and I may have given you the wrong impression about the nature of our relationship. When I realized you had developed feelings that I couldn't reciprocate, I tried to distance myself gradually to avoid hurting you. Gradually, I repeated. Is that why you were still living in my apartment as of yesterday? Is that why we signed a lease renewal 8 months ago? Is that why you have a key to my place and we share a bank account? His voice smooth and reasonable. Marcus, Elena told me about the financial arrangement you two had. She was trying to help you afford a nicer place by contributing to expenses, and she thought having a key would make it easier for her to help. With her charity work when you weren't available, financial arrangement, I said slowly. Elena, can you tell everyone in this room how much money you've contributed to our shared expenses over the past 2 years? Elena's face went pale. The truth was that I'd been supporting her almost entirely, paying for rent, utilities, groceries, and most of her personal expenses, while she built her charity foundation. Dylan's narrative only worked if you didn't examine the financial details. Specific amounts aren't relevant, she said quickly. What matters is that Marcus misunderstood the nature of our arrangement. Actually, the specific amounts are very relevant, I said, pulling out my phone. I've been documenting our expenses for tax purposes, and I can show everyone exactly who's been paying for what. I pulled up my banking app and turned the screen toward the room. Here are the rent payments for our apartment for the past 12 months. All from my account. Here are the utility bills, the grocery receipts, the car insurance payments for Elena's vehicle, all me. The room had gone very quiet.
Ow.
Dylan's confident expression was starting to crack around the edges. Elena, can you show us any bank records of payments you've made toward shared expenses? I asked. Any receipts for groceries you bought for our apartment? Any utility bills in your name? This is ridiculous, Dylan interjected. You're trying to weaponize normal relationship financial dynamics to support your delusion. Normal relationship financial dynamics, I repeated. So you're admitting we were in a relationship? Dylan realized his mistake immediately. I meant the financial dynamics of your friendship arrangement. Friendship arrangement where I pay all the bills? She lives in my apartment. We share a bed, and she introduces me to her family as her boyfriend at every holiday gathering for the past 6 years. Elena stood up abruptly. This is exactly the kind of behavior I was talking about. Marcus becomes obsessive about details and tries to twist everything to support his version of events. Obsessive about details like the pregnancy test you showed me 3 months ago, I asked. The one where you cried and told me we were going to be parents? The silence that followed was deafening. Elena and Dylan exchanged a look that confirmed everything I suspected. They'd hoped to steamroll me with their coordinated story, but they hadn't prepared for me to have specific, verifiable details. Elena said, the HR representative speaking for the first time. Can you clarify the timeline of your relationship with both Marcus and Dylan? Elena's composure finally cracked completely. This is harassment. I don't have to subject myself to this interrogation. Actually, you do, I said, standing and walking to the conference room's projection screen. Because I brought some visual aids, connected my laptop to the projector and pulled up a folder I'd labeled evidence. The first image that appeared was a photo from Elena's Instagram account posted 4 months ago. It showed the two of us at a charity gala, her arm around my waist, with the caption, "My amazing boyfriend supporting my passion projects as always. #luckygirl, #charity work, #love. Elena, can you explain this post to the room? Asked. Specifically the part where you refer to me as your amazing boyfriend. Dylan's face had gone gray. Elena, you told me you two broke up over a year ago. We did, Elena said desperately. That post was just for appearances. The charity's image. I clicked to the next image, a screenshot of a text conversation from 6 weeks ago. Elena's messages were clearly visible. Can't wait to start our family together. You're going to be such an amazing dad. I love you so much, Marcus. Appearances, I said. Lena, can you explain why you were texting me about starting our family together 6 weeks ago, if we broke up over a year ago? But the room erupted in whispers. The executives were looking between Elena and Dylan with expressions ranging from confusion to disgust. The lawyer was taking notes furiously. I think there's been a significant misrepresentation of facts here, Williams said slowly. Elena, these messages and social media posts directly contradict everything you and Dylan have told us about Marcus's behavior. Elena burst into tears, but they looked more like tears of frustration than genuine emotion. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Marcus is very persistent, and I felt like I had to go along with his version of our relationship to avoid making him angry. For 6 years? Asked the HR representative. You felt pressured to maintain a fake relationship, live in his apartment, and share financial responsibilities for 6 years? Dylan stood up, his face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous. Elena, tell them the truth about what really happened. But Elena had run out of lies. She looked between Dylan and me, between the executives and the evidence displayed on the screen, and realized that her carefully constructed narrative had collapsed entirely. I want a lawyer, she said finally. Without legal representation? That's probably wise, said Williams dryly. Dylan, I think you should also consider whether you want to continue with your consulting contract, given the circumstances. Dylan's career ambitions evaporated in real time as he realized that his influence campaign had backfired spectacularly. Instead of positioning himself as a professional helping to resolve a workplace issue, he'd revealed himself as someone willing to lie to executives and manipulate personnel decisions for personal gain. This isn't over, Dylan said to me, as he gathered his laptop. Elena and I are going to fight this. Fight what, exactly? I asked. The truth? Good luck with that. As the room cleared, Williams approached me with an expression of genuine regret. Marcus, I owe you an apology. I should have asked for your side of the story before accepting Dylan's allegations at face value. I understand, I said, packing up my laptop. Dylan can be very convincing when he wants to be. What are your plans now? Williams asked. Obviously, your position here is secure, and we'll be reviewing Dylan's consulting contract immediately. I looked around the conference room, where I'd just dismantled 6 months of lies and manipulation. It felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Complete clarity about what I wanted. Actually, I said, I think it might be time for that fresh start Dylan was talking about, but on my terms, not his. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Seattle, laptop open, reviewing the final details of my employment contract with Innovate Tech Solutions. The offer had come through a former colleague who'd moved to the Pacific Northwest 2 years earlier and had been trying to recruit me ever since. The salary was 30% higher than what I'd been making at TechFlow. The benefits were exceptional. And most importantly, it was 3,000 miles away from Austin and everything that had happened there. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Dude, you need to see this. Elena and Dylan's situation just got way worse." Attached was a link to an article in the Austin Business Journal with the headline, "Local Charity Foundation Under Investigation for Financial Irregularities." I clicked the link and read with growing amazement. Apparently, Elena's charity foundation was being audited by both the IRS and the Texas Attorney General's office. Anonymous tips had led investigators to discover a pattern of questionable expenses, inflated administrative costs, and fund diversions that coincidentally aligned with Elena's personal spending habits. The article mentioned that Dylan Martinez, who had recently been terminated from his consulting position at TechFlow Solutions, was also being investigated for his role in the foundation's financial management. A second text from Jake arrived. "Gets better. Elena's parents are apparently livid. Word is they're cutting her off financially and threatening to sue Dylan for fraud. The whole family is imploding." I felt a moment of something that might have been satisfaction, followed immediately by exhaustion. Even in vindication, thinking about Elena and Dylan drained my energy. I'd spent too many months of my life entangled in their drama, and now I wanted nothing more than to build something entirely new. My phone rang, and my mother's contact photo appeared on the screen. I'd been avoiding her calls for weeks, not ready to deal with the aftermath of Elena's manipulation campaign. "Marcus, honey, I'm so sorry." Linda's voice was thick with emotion. "I got a call from Patricia Rodriguez this morning. She wanted to apologize for what Elena put you through. Apparently, the whole family is horrified by what's come out about her behavior." "It's okay, Mom," I said, and meant it. Couldn't have known the extent of what was happening. "No, it's not okay. I should have trusted you. Should have known that you wouldn't lie about something so important. If your father and I feel terrible about doubting you." "Elena was very convincing," I said. "She fooled me for months, too." Patricia told me that Elena admitted to lying about the timeline of her relationship with Dylan. She's been seeing him since 2 weeks after he returned to Austin. The pregnancy was planned. Marcus. She knew from the beginning that Dylan was the father. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Not just the affair, not just the deception about paternity, but the calculated cruelty of letting me believe for months that I was going to be a father. Elena had watched me plan our future, research parenting techniques, and fall in love with a child that was never mine, all while knowing exactly what she was doing. "I'm glad you know the truth now," I said finally, "but I think it's better for everyone if I just move forward." I got a job offer in Seattle. I'm taking it. Seattle. My mother's voice rose in alarm. "Marcus, that's so far away. You don't have to run from this. Lena and Dylan are the ones who should be ashamed." "I'm not running, Mom. I'm choosing. For the first time in 6 years, I get to make decisions based on what I want, not what Elena needs or what her family expects or what Dylan thinks is best for everyone. And what I want is a fresh start somewhere that doesn't have memories attached to every street corner." There was a long pause. "Will you at least come home before you leave? Let us take you to dinner. Say goodbye properly." "I'll think about it," I said, though I already knew the answer was no. Austin held too many ghosts. Too many reminders of the man I'd been when I thought love meant sacrificing everything for someone who saw that sacrifice as weakness. After hanging up, I walked to the hotel window and looked out at the Seattle skyline. City felt clean, anonymous, full of possibilities that had nothing to do with charity galas or pregnancy announcements or the complex web of relationships I'd finally untangled myself from. My laptop chimed with an email notification. The message was from an address I didn't recognize, but the subject line made my stomach clench. "Marcus, please read this. Elena." Against my better judgment, I opened it. "Marcus, I know you probably never want to hear from me again, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not sorry that I got caught, not sorry that things went badly, but genuinely sorry for what I put you through. You deserved honesty from the beginning, and I was too cowardly to give it to you. You were a good partner, a good man, and you deserved so much better than what I gave you. I hope you find happiness in Seattle." I hope you find someone who appreciates what you have to offer instead of taking it for granted the way I did. I know this doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know that I understand what I lost when I lost you, Elena. I read the email 3 times, waiting to feel something. Anger, sadness, vindication, closure. Instead, I felt nothing but a profound indifference. Elena's apology was sincere, but it came months too late, and from a person I no longer had any emotional connection to. She'd become a stranger who happened to know intimate details about my past. I deleted the email without responding and closed my laptop. The flight to Seattle was smooth, uneventful, exactly what I needed. As the plane lifted off from Austin Bergstrom International Airport, I watched the city shrink below me and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine excitement about the future. Not excitement mixed with anxiety about Elena's approval, not excitement tempered by concerns about her family's expectations, just pure anticipation for what came next. 6 months later, I was standing in the break room of my new office, making coffee and listening to my colleague Sarah tell a story about her weekend hiking trip. She was smart, funny, and refreshingly direct in a way that reminded me how exhausting it had been to constantly guess at Elena's hidden agendas and unspoken expectations. "You should come with us next time," Sarah said, stirring sugar into her coffee. "The trails around Mount Rainier are incredible this time of year." "I'd like that," I said, and realized I meant it completely. No calculations about whether hiking was something Elena would approve of, no worries about how it would affect charity event planning, no complex analysis of hidden meanings, just a simple invitation and a simple acceptance. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Saw Dylan at a bar downtown last night. He looks terrible. Asked about you. Told him you were living your best life in Seattle, and he should focus on his own problems." I smiled and put the phone away without responding. Dylan Martinez. Elena Rodriguez. The pregnancy announcement that had shattered my old life, all of it felt like something that had happened to someone else in a different lifetime. That evening, I sat on the balcony of my apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I was genuinely happy to be exactly where I was, with exactly the life I'd built for myself. My phone rang one last time. Jake's name appeared on the screen, and I answered with a smile. "How's the new life treating you, man?" "Like freedom," I said, and knew it was true. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.